All right, I'd like to call this special meeting of the Board of Education to order on May 12th, 2021. It's the budget hearing, and it is 6:00 p.m. If we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. And with that, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Bill.
Thank you, Michelle, and good evening to everyone joining us tonight, and welcome to our public budget hearing for the 21-22 school year. The development of a school district budget is a thoughtful year-long process that includes careful long-term planning. It's a challenging, multifaceted process, including budget preparation, presentation, review by the Board of Education and community members, and formal budget adoption. The 2021-22 budget process has been exceedingly difficult as we've been navigating the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the pandemic, our constant guiding principle in developing this budget has been steadfast, prudently investing and aligning resources to positively impact student experiences, while at the same time being fiscally responsible. Crafting fiscally responsible budgets requires creativity in both staffing and programming. In spite of the budgetary constraints imposed by the state, the district has been able to maintain a wide breadth of programs and supports. This has impacted our students in significant ways, and we're proud that many new families cite the breadth of programs and the range of supports that we offer as a reason for moving to our community. I'm really pleased to report that the proposed budget of $14,032,840 is tax cap compliant, and that represents a 1.6% tax levy increase. It keeps our staffing, academic, and extracurricular programs intact, achieving savings through attrition and efficiencies in the delivery of instructional programs. I'd like to thank Matt Crum, our business manager, and our entire administrative team for all their hard work in developing this budget. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Matt, who will walk you through the particulars of this proposed budget. So Matt.
Thanks, Bill. And as I get prepared here to share my screen and go through the presentation, I want to echo your sentiments and thank you, the administrative team, certainly the Board of Ed, and all those involved, either directly or indirectly in the budget development process. The process is not getting any easier. Certainly this past year, there were a lot of new challenges. We anticipate having more new challenges as we move forward, returning to post-pandemic life and education. Quickly, going to touch on our tax levy calculation, get into some of the specifics of the budget, talk a little bit about federal monies, and then talk about the next steps. I'm going to go through for any, obviously for the folks in the meeting are familiar with our preliminary hearing when the budget was adopted. There's a lot of important things in there that are worth repeating before we get into some of the specifics on the budget. The tax levy calculation for us in New York State, all school districts have to calculate an allowable tax levy increase under the New York State tax cap regulations. Our Hamilton Central Schools allowable tax levy increase this year of 1.60% is lower than it typically is. Typically, people think of the tax cap being a 2% minimal increase. It is, however, based on the lesser of 2% or the statewide consumer price index for the prior 12 months leading up to the budget vote. That number this year is 1.23%. So all districts in New York State started with a baseline tax levy increase, allowable increase of 1.23%. We do have a factor for local tax-based growth, so new construction of taxable property in the district, which bumps us up a little bit. And then there's an exemption or an exclusion for the local share of any of the debt service, the principal and interest payments for any voter-approved capital expenses. So primarily for building projects and also for bus purchases. So with that, factoring in those exclusions, it was pretty straightforward this year. I'll get into in a minute. We had some change in our debt service, but our allowable tax levy increased 1.6%. This next slide shows sort of a historical snapshot of where the district has been in the last 10 years or so with tax levy increases in the age of the tax cap. You can see with the exception of 1 year in 2015-16, all of our tax levy increases have been tax cap compliant. And you can see for the last few years, we've been in that 1 to 3% range, very modest increases. With regard to the state budget, and this was really one of the focal points of our last meeting in April prior to adoption, but I think it bears repeating. In January, when the executive budget proposal came from the governor, it was not a real positive outlook. There were a number of things in that budget that would have been very difficult for schools. It's sort of becoming the norm. The executive proposal is not real favorable to school districts. And then ultimately around April 1st, when the legislature adopts the New York State budget, it's a little better than what was projected in January. Really good news this year, mostly because of things that didn't happen that could have happened. The executive proposal was to freeze foundation aid, which is the primary operating aid that school districts get in New York State. The enacted budget had a minimum 2% increase for all districts, and HCS benefits from a 3% increase. The plan for the next couple of years is to fully fund foundation aid, which will lead to continued increases, hopefully, for all school districts. But that remains to be seen. That could change on an annual basis as we get into the adopted state budgets. Another big thing was a local district funding adjustment. So the idea that we were going to receive federal funding as a result of the pandemic has always been floating out there. And the governor was essentially proposing that any monies that schools were to receive in New York State, he in turn would reduce district state aid in that amount to close the gap of the state budget deficit. We're happy to find out that now the federal funding that we will receive over the next couple of years, at least for next year, there won't be an adjustment to our state aid tied to federal monies received. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So the federal monies that are coming to the district, at least for now, it appears, will be true benefits to the districts, and we won't have our state aid reduced by corresponding amounts. Some other things, just proposals to adjust how districts receive state aid based on certain expenditures was rejected. That provides some consistency for districts and the ability to plan better. And then also some changes to the STAR program that would have really affected taxpayers and ultimately tax items and tax revenues for school districts. When you look at our budget, a couple for next year, the one that's been adopted and will be voted on next week, the 1.6% of tax levy increase equates to $123,000. Now remember, we're working with roughly a $14 million budget. The foundation aid of 3% increase equates to $103,000. Building aid, so we will get quite a substantial increase in building aid next year of over $400,000. You'll see on the next slide that there's a corresponding increase to our debt service payments, principal and interest payments for our ongoing capital project right now. It's essentially a wash. And then continued use of fund balance and reserves. So in order to balance the budget, remain tax cap compliant, and keep everything intact, the use of fund balance and reserves in the amount of $190,000. On the expenditure side, I'm going to start at the bottom just with the debt service. You can see this is the corresponding principal and interest payments, the increase in that amount, which is essentially cancels out the increase in the building aid. As far as operating expenses, general day-to-day expenses, employee benefits continues to be the largest cost driver. roughly 170,000. So if you compare that to some of the key revenue increases, the tax levy increase and the foundation aid increase in and of themselves isn't enough to cover the increase that we have in employee benefits. Special programs is something else that's really quite volatile for a small district like us. I'll talk about this in a little more detail in a minute. But this includes all of the alternate education programs that aren't housed at HCS. So we have a couple students that are going to be attending programs outside the district. Great programs, but they are costly. And we also have an increase in number of students that have taken BOCE CTE classes, which I'll get into in a minute, which equates to a $57,000 increase budget to budget from the current year to next. With regard to staffing and programs, and as Bill mentioned, we're really happy to be able to look forward to next year with no budgetary staff or program reductions. We are able to do that in large part because we will have 6 teacher retirements on June 30th of this year, 5 in the elementary and 1 in the secondary. 5 of those 6 vacancies will be replaced with new hires. So we will save a substantial amount of money through attrition with those 6 teachers who provided, I believe, 150 or so years of service to HCS alone and additional years outside of the district. By them leaving and retiring, much earned retirement, and only replacing 5 of those positions, we save a lot of money through attrition. A couple of positions that had been reduced in the budget in prior years, also through attrition, will be fully reinstated. So the last time we had a social studies teacher retire, that was replaced with a half-time full-time equivalent, or FTE. So that'll be returning to a full-time position. A full-time elementary principal, return of the actual position of an elementary principal. At this time last year, we did not budget for a full-time director of facilities because we knew the process would go well into this current year. So this budget returns the full-time director of facilities. Really, the only real program change, or that might be a noticeable change for parents or people in the community, currently we have AM only pre-K. We have 2 sections of AM pre-K. Next year we will be transitioning to an AM and a PM pre-K. This is going to help us with scheduling, and it impacts the elementary library position. So we'll be saving a little bit in terms of full-time equivalents in the library. So we will have 1 teacher doing an AM pre-K section and a PM pre-K section. And again, no budgetary staff or program reductions. We are able to only replace 5 of 6 because we do have 1 bubble class, a large class that's now worked its way up into the middle school, into 7th grade, and one of our 6th grade teachers will be moving back to the elementary. Just a quick overview in the required reporting format that we have to report our budget with regard to program, administrative, and capital expenditures. You'll see a slight increase in program, only a slight increase as far as a percentage goes. And again, primarily due to all the savings and attrition with the retiring faculty. The administrative increase of 5.47%, and again, that percentage is driven primarily due to the return of the elementary principal position as an administrative position. And then a significant increase in the capital expenditures. And again, this is due primarily to the increase in debt service, the principal and interest payments for our ongoing current capital project. So the total budget, the total spending increase of 4.76%, with a tax levy increase of 1.6. Now, if we take out the budget increase, the capital expenditure increase attributed to the new principal and interest payments and the corresponding building aid that's coming in of a little over $400,000, the net real operational budget increase for next year is 1.47%. So that more closely aligns with the increase of the tax levy of 1.6%. So again, the total budget increase of almost 5% is largely in part due to the principal and interest payments and offset by subsequent building aid from the state. If we dive down a little deeper, and again, this is pulled directly from the budget newsletter, which, this presentation is on the website. The budget newsletter went out to all community members. The newsletter is also on the website. You'll see more of a breakdown of what's in the program budget. So the instruction piece, as I mentioned, this decrease, both in terms of dollars and the percentages, due to the attrition from the teacher retirements. Special programs, you can see a significant increase. This includes both the changes in special education placements and also the increase in students attending the career and technical ed program at BOCES. Everything else is relatively steady. You'll see a reduction in the instructional media section. That includes the libraries. And again, with the move to the AM, PM pre-K, that frees up some savings just in terms of where staffing is reported in the budget. And then the employee benefits, as it is attributed to the faculty and staff that is in this section of the budget. The administrative budget, and not a lot going on here. This central admin and finance, you'll see a little bit of a spike. That's the cost of doing business, unfortunately, is going up. This includes a lot of things associated with the central admin and the finance office, audit services, certain legal services, bond counsel, those kind of things. The cost of doing business is going up. Everything else is relatively steady. And again, the most significant increase in terms of the dollar amount is in the admin improvement line, which is the return of the principal to that administrative position. And lastly, the capital budget. Central service is the basically buildings and grounds, operations, maintenance of the district for the year. That change can be attributed to the return of the director, a full year's of the director's salary and benefits being added in, and then obviously the big increase in debt service. One of the things that we are required to provide, or at least make available to community members, is this chart that shows spending per pupil for HCS comparatively to other districts around New York State. The source of this data is off the New York State school report card on the SED website, the Fiscal Accountability Supplement. You'll notice these numbers are from the 2018-2019 school year. So these are actual expenditures from that year. There's a couple year lag with the state for this reporting. The 18-19 is the most recent year that's been completed and that there's data for. So there's 4 different school or district group descriptions. There's 4 different ones, and Hamilton is in the average need or resource capacity group. So you'll see the 2 categories of general education and special education, and you'll see where Hamilton falls compared to other districts that are in the average need and resource capacity, as well as all districts in New York State. So you can see with general education, we're pretty much in line, not far off. We're a little bit above similar districts, a little bit below all districts in New York State. Really, where there's a big disparity is with special education. You can see we're quite a bit lower than similar districts in all New York State districts. I don't want this to be misleading and suggest that we are not doing what we need to do in terms of special ed and providing services. I actually think it's a testament to the work that Mr. Ellis and the principals do, the committee does, the parents do, and making sure that we're doing what we need to do for all of our students, but doing it in a cost-effective and efficient way. So, this is data we have to provide, and certainly more detailed information is available on the state website if you're curious about other school districts. Quickly, before we talk about the remaining steps of the budget, I just want to talk briefly about a constantly evolving topic, and that is federal stimulus money. So basically what we know is over the next 3 to 4 years, we will benefit from roughly $1.5 million of federal stimulus monies through the CRRSA, which is Coronavirus Response Act, something Act, and the American Recovery Plan Act. All school districts are going to benefit significantly from this. I had a webinar today hoping to know more. Unfortunately, I don't know a whole lot more. There seem to be more questions than answers at this point. We are working on moving forward on utilizing these funds as early as this summer with potential programming. Some of the monies, there's going to be some flexibility with in terms of district use. Others we know are going to be more restrictive and have to be used for certain things. Some of the buzzwords that keep coming up: return to in-person instruction, loss of learning. There's a growing sentiment that even the restrictive money, we're going to be able to have some flexibility as long as we plan accordingly and do our diligence in making sure we're doing the right thing for our students. So more to come on that. Certainly, it's going to be a big help in the next couple of years in our budget development and a big part of it. One thing to note, all of the funds are grants and aid. So it's it's additional money from state aid that we get from New York State. So it's not supplanting any money in the budget, but supplementing what we do. So it's going to be real important from a planning standpoint and getting creative and using those funds to supplement what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, which is covered under the operating budget of the district. So those funds are things that we will be talking about. We're talking about now. It'll be part of the big picture as we move forward. So lastly, just sort of some, as we wrap up here, and certainly if there's any questions, we will address any of those. If you have any, you can throw them in the comment box. Next Tuesday, our vote, noon to 8 in the school bus garage. There will be 3 propositions. The first is the school budget amount of just over 14 million that we've just walked through. That's a simple yes or no, and the corresponding 1.6 tax levy increase in order to balance the budget. The second proposition is for the purchase of up to 2 new school buses with the cost not to exceed $180,000, and to levy the taxes there within. We've been trying to make an effort to get on a regular bus replacement schedule. There's often questions on this. It's really challenging for a small district like us. Typically what we do is we don't have a fleet that's large enough where it's as simple as getting rid of our oldest buses and replacing them with newest. Our oldest buses don't necessarily have the most miles, the most wear and tear, or necessarily in the worst shape. We get very detailed information from our Madison, Oneida, BOCES central maintenance office, where we do all of our bus service with regard to the cost per mile for each of our buses. We get rid of our buses when they're no longer cost effective. So it's not as simple as just getting rid of our oldest bus. We also have to be ready to accommodate our ever-changing needs. As an example, if we have a student who's wheelchair bound or has mobility concerns, we need to make sure that we have transportation that can accommodate those students. So we have to be real cognizant of that. We have more students attending programs outside of districts. So we may have bus runs that contain only 1 or 2 children. So to do that, in recent years, we've purchased smaller vehicles, a Suburban or a minivan or smaller van type buses in an effort to be more efficient. So it's not an exact science. It's something that we monitor constantly, but this proposition gives us the flexibility to address our needs moving forward. It could result in 1 bus if we only need 1. And certainly the cost is a not to exceed allotment. So we certainly will not exceed the $180,000 with ultimately the purchase of the 2 vehicles. And the third proposition, on behalf of our friends, the village and the Hamilton Village Public Library, this is the proposition for their tax levy to support the library for the following year. So again, the first three are simple yes/no propositions. We do have a vacant board seat, so we technically have a Board of Education election this year. And we have one candidate, Mr. Corey Duclos, and just the one candidate. So it's for a 3-year term. So that'll be on the back side of the ballot. Again, just some housekeeping stuff with regard to the vote. Tuesday night, Tuesday during the day into the night, 12 to 8 in the HCS bus garage. Absentee ballots need to be received by Monday at 4 o'clock with Miss Curley in the district office. Voter qualifications. U.S. citizen, 18 years of age, have to reside within the district for 30 days preceding the election. And just for those out there listening, just we appreciate your understanding, cooperation. There may be proof of residency required. One other thing with regard to the vote, and I should have put this in the presentation, we will be adhering to and enforcing masking and social distancing throughout the day at the vote. So we will have the one ballot casting machine, but in terms of weights and lines, we will have the space extending out into the parking lot where we will make our best effort and be diligent in keeping people socially distanced and following all COVID protocols. So if you recall, last year, this entire election was done by absentee ballot. It was a long night tallying votes. So I know that Mrs. Curley is very happy to be returning to a more normal vote. So, and then, like any of the documents that were presented tonight, we also are required to provide a tax exemption report for all the tax exempt properties in the district. That is available in the district office upon request. And that is all I have. So if there are any questions specific to the vote, budget development process, any of the specifics, I'll do my best to answer those. But again, thanks to Bill, thanks to our team, thanks to the board, thanks to the community members that have provided input, and all of our supporting partners, the Emerald Foundation, McNeese Foundation over the years, Colgate University, obviously. It's really a community effort, and we're thankful for the support that we get. Are there any questions in the comment box, Michelle?
There are not. We did ask a little while ago for people to put comments in, and we don't have any yet. So I'd like to thank you for your time putting this together. It's well organized, and for the time for all of you that spent to make sure that we were tax cap compliant. Does anybody on the call right now on the board or administrators have anything for Matt or Bill?
Other than thank you, no.
You're welcome. Thank you, Travis.
I still see nothing in the chat, so I think at this time, if you don't have anything else, Bill, we can move to the last piece.
No, I'm all set. Thank you, Matt.
Right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll move.
I'll move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, and have
Thank
a
you
great
again,
night.
Matt. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks. Bye.
Good night.
Bill, can I ask you a quick question?